Today we're talking about cluttering and decluttering. Phew, what a mouthful. One of the definitions of clutter is a lot of objects being in a state of untidiness. Now look around your home. Is it cluttered? Now I'm talking just normal clutter, bits and pieces lying around the place, or do you have a place for everything and everything has its place? When looking at personality types, it's very often the perceiving type who are more likely to be cluttered, as they're more flexible and unstructured. If you're a perceiving type, you might tend to put things down and leave them for a while. Have a think about them. Maybe you'll pick them up later, or maybe only when it's time for a really big cleanup. Whereas if you're a judging type, you generally like order and structure, and you tend to put things away immediately. As perceiving types, Paul and I have many bowls in our house that are full of the things we can't be bothered to put away. A judging friend of ours jokingly calls them our puddles of clutter. She and I discuss how she couldn't stand having these piles around her house when everything could be put away. We laugh, but I don't change because it doesn't really bother me. What do you do? Today I'm talking to Kirsty Farrugia. We're discussing how clutter can collect and how different people create clutter and the damages that clutter can cause relationships. We also learn how Kirsty might just be a perceiving type and her husband a judging type, and how these differences do affect relationships. We look at the importance of awareness of each other in relationships and understanding each other's style of tidying up. And then what happens when our clutter just gets out of control and we end up with so much that it immobilizes our lives, relationships, our vision, and causes great mental stress. I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Kirsty Farrugia is the founder of Curious Freedom, and in her own words, she used to be a red-hot mess, but she got sick of it. In her frustration, she turned to the experts for help and put into practice all that she'd learned. Experimenting and tweaking things to suit her lifestyle, Kirsty practiced her new habits and realised she loved living in her home. Keeping it clutter-free gave her more time to do the things she loved. In 2012, Kirsty's first business, Feels Like Home Professional Organisers, was born. Kirsty was then approached by a professional organiser in Melbourne, and they started a podcast on decluttering and organising together. Now this was an instant success, reaching the top of the charts in just a few weeks after launching. At the end of 2022, Curious Freedom was created. Declutter coach Kirsty and her teams believe in tailoring their services and personalising their approach to fit their clients' needs and goals. Hi Kirsty, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Kate, for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure for me because I'm really looking forward to hearing all about what you do and how you declutter people and their lives, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is that you started off being someone that actually looked to get your clutter cleared up, and then you became an expert yourself. Now, you say that you practiced and practiced. So can you tell us about your journey from cluttered to uncluttered? And I was lying in bed last night thinking about this. How cluttered were you to start with? Do you get what I mean? Like, were you a really cluttered person, or?
This is how I tell the story, that my husband, my boyfriend at the time, used to come into my bedroom, which originally was in my family home, and he would come in and clean up my bedroom because he couldn't handle being in the bedroom with piles of stuff everywhere. So that probably should have given me fair warning for what marriage was going to be like. And then again, when he was living, he'd moved out of home, and I'd go over and visit him there, and I'd put something down and he'd put it away, like put it in a drawer. And I was like, but I'm still, like, it's lip balm. I'm about to use it again.
I'm still using it.
And again, as much as my mum tried to warn me about what married life was like, I still went in to married life. No, everything's going to be different for me. I'm the unicorn. And then the rub of marriage happened, and the rub of, joining two lives together and two different upbringings together happened. And he is very organized and is not he doesn't need to be visually reminded of things. So, he can put the washing basket, in a separate room and remember to come back and hang them out. And I'm not like that. I need visual reminders constantly to remember to do things. But he had real grace and ease in doing life. And there was also the rub of like the frustration of the different personalities within our home. And so it was becoming that real rub within our marriage. And so I went, well, probably being, a product of the 80s and 90s upbringing was like, well, I need to do what my husband wants me to do. And I started just changing my habits. And so it was really frustrating to him that my stuff was everywhere and I didn't know where a gift card was and I didn't know where anything was, whereas he knew where every single thing was in our home. And so I just started changing my ways and just really thinking of my future self. I think that was the biggest thing that I thought of, like, actually my future self is going to thank me when it comes 5 o'clock and the clothes are on the line and I can just bring them in instead of going, oh no, they're still in the washing machine. And so I just started reminding myself to just do it now. When I walked over something, instead of walking over something on the floor, I'd stop and pick it up and put it away. And life became easier for me, and obviously easier in our marriage because I wasn't frustrating him as much. And then we had kids, and and I had to put into practice even more habits. And there came a time, I think after my daughter was born, I went to Howard Storage and picked up their brochure and got home, and the kids must have been asleep, and I had a minute to myself to read this magazine, and inside it was an article about a professional organizer. And I was like, a what? And I read that article and I was like, oh, I could totally help people to declutter and organize their homes, because I thought I was unique. I'm not unique in our industry. There's quite a lot of us who have gone from red hot messes to professional organizers or declutter coaches. But at the time I was like, well, surely I'm unique, because surely people who do this for a living are naturally organized, and this is a learned thing for me and a real change of mindset for me. And so here we are 11 years later.
Wow. Because it is, I'm listening to you and that's me. You are me.
Yes.
I am you. And so it is a matter of habits. My husband is also more like myself, so we didn't have that in our marriage. We had other things, but we didn't have the clutter thing there sitting there. But it is actually a matter of creating habits, isn't it, to make that. And it's hard. It's hard for people like you and I. It doesn't come naturally, does it? It doesn't just flow into seeing the mess or seeing what you're stepping over and putting it away. So I'm totally with you there. So really, and I know that I can change, and I do sometimes, but I haven't created great habits like you obviously have. And like you say, you are the perfect person to come in, because if these are the kind of people that are creating clutter a lot of the time, you are perfect for the psychology behind it and understanding where they're starting at.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who's naturally organised kind of doesn't have that headset around, oh, that's okay. They just look and think, how come you can't do this? Like, really? So that's a fantastic start. And did your husband notice when you changed?
Yeah, I mean, I still irritate him. Like,
That's life.
Still, there's spaces in my home that aren't as organized. Like the room that I'm in at the moment is my office, and I don't mind a bit of mess. Like, I don't mind, that doesn't bother me as much. But saying that, I have actually changed so much so that I don't mind going into anybody's home and seeing mess in other people's homes. But when it comes, the kids come home from school and they leave their stuff places because they're teenagers. And I feel calmer within myself now when the kitchen bench is clear, when things are ordered and back in their place. Like, I can feel that I can relax, which is what my husband was saying to me. Like, he could not relax until things were back in its place. And now I feel like I've morphed into him, which is also what happens in marriage sometimes. Hey,
to a degree,
Yeah.
it's called getting along with each other, and it really works sometimes. And every now and then you can slip into your natural self, but it's all about putting yourself in someone else's shoes in that extent, and that's great because in doing so you're still here. Today with teenage kids, that's fantastic. So, when you started your business, how did that all start, and how's it evolved over the years? Because you've changed names, and so tell us about your journey through that.
Oh, yeah. So at the time, I was really lucky. This is back in the day when Facebook groups, local Facebook groups, let you advertise for free. And so I could just advertise, they had a weekly business night. And so I just started advertising, and I helped some friends as well. And it just grew organically that way. And then a friend of mine approached me. She was also in the industry, and she was wanting to do some collaboration. And I had just got into podcasting, listening to podcasts, and I had felt like, oh, maybe I should do a podcast. But I thought it was just going to be on a hobby and a side hustle, like nothing to do with my business. And when we were trying to figure out what to do, I was like, why don't we start a podcast? And she was like, what's a podcast? Because, not every woman and her dog was doing podcasts 6 years ago. And so we started a podcast, and it gained traction really quickly. Like, I think within the first 3 weeks, we'd had 1,500 downloads, which was incredible.
Amazing.
And then soon after, I think we got invited onto Weekend Sunrise, and I'd gone on Sky News, and there was it just happened to be the flavor of the month at that point. Like, decluttering was, on the rise. It was just after Marie Kondo, and it was just, the zeitgeist, and it was like catching, I always reckon it was catching the perfect wave at the perfect time. So after the Sunrise episode, we clicked over 100,000 downloads, and I think we were the first Australian podcasts that were talking about decluttering, whereas there was loads of Americans, but Australians wanted to hear Australians speak, and then Americans love hearing Australian accents. So
lovely.
So we were still running our own separate businesses for a couple of years, and then we merged into everything into the one business. And then at the end of last year, it was time for me to start afresh. And so I started afresh at the end of last year, and here we are.
Wow. And you've got several teams in different states as well doing that with you, which is fantastic. So when you meet all these people, we were just talking before, there's so many different personalities and psychologies, different people. So are there any characteristics that stand out to you about people who struggle with decluttering? I know that we were talking about working with ADHD people and things like that. If you can just let us know some of that information.
Yeah, I think, for the last couple of years, I think ADHD has been put under a spotlight, particularly with Em Rusciano last year. I went to the press club and spoke about her diagnosis. And I think that a lot of women, when our children are diagnosed with on the spectrum or with ADHD, it's highlighting to a lot of mums that maybe their kids are got it from them, and because it looks different, it can look very different in women than it can in men, and girls to boys. Like typically, I know I'm no psychologist or anything, but typically, like how I understand it is a lot of time boys are the hyperactive rather than the inattentive. They can be both and both together, whereas girls are usually more inattentive, but girls can mask that inattentiveness by being socially acceptable. So we'll be the girls who are, paying attention and look like we're paying attention in class when actually we're off with the fairies and being inattentive. And so I think that and women are so adaptive as well. And so we learn to adjust and adapt our behavior and our personalities to mask what's really going on. And so I think that how that can play out when it comes to ADHD in the home is that one of the outcomes of ADHD, I'm not saying the words right, but is
no, that's okay.
Is executive functioning. And executive functioning helps us to remember to put on the dishwasher, to know that actually we need to put the dishwasher on, we need to put the tablet in, we need to turn it on, we need to come back and unload it, we need to put those dishes away, not just on the bench. And so it's very hard now not to be a psychologist in my head and see everybody with ADHD now that I've learned more about it.
Do you actually have that conversation with those people?
Sometimes where appropriate, I'll go, we've got a really great podcast on ADHD, where we had a psychologist come in and talk about ADHD in women in particular and how that does affect their executive functioning. So I'll often suggest that to them. I think in a lot of ways that lots of people are on the spectrum of different things anyway, and we've all got so much going on in our lives that it can look like we don't have executive functioning
anyway
because, we're worried about our parents, we're worried about our teenagers, we're worried about our children, we're worried about our husbands, we're worried about our friends. We're not always present anyway. So,
yeah. So does anyone, do people just seem more time poor these days in that sense of struggling with that? Or is it to do with people being more like you and I and just not having the skills or the desire or the skills to put those things in place?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it's probably both. I think that if you, I often say that I'm like the boy in the Sixth Sense movie where he sees dead people everywhere. I go into homes and I see lack of habits everywhere. And that can stem from lots of different things. It can stem from lack of executive functioning skills, but it can stem from time poorness. It can extend from laziness. It can extend from procrastination, and it can be a consequence of never being taught that. Like maybe your mum was a stay-at-home mum and she did everything for you, and so you never learnt the skills. Maybe like there's so many reasons why we may have succeeded in adulting in so many different ways, and keeping the home functional and clutter-free is not one of those skills that we've taken into adulthood.
So when you go into people's homes and you help them and you build these habits and everything and you walk away, do you ever go back and check? Just see if they've kept up. Like, do you say, and I'll be back in 3 weeks' time, just to keep an eye, because it's all very lovely, and I know that certain people will fall back into things. Do you, and do they keep it uncluttered?
Yeah, again, another great question. And everybody's unique and everybody's different and every family is unique and different, as you all know.
I do.
And yeah. And so we definitely, so a lot of the times our sessions are not just one-offs. So we'll come in and do the whole house over a couple of months. That's not always the case. There's definitely the case for one-offs. Regardless of how long we're in a person's home, we definitely talk about habits while we're in the home. And we definitely want to understand the person and understand how they've got themselves frustrated and overwhelmed. And so we can speak to that when we're in the home, because it's not just about like, okay, what do you want to let go of? What systems can we put in place for you? And it's about like, let's understand you, because our heart is not to make a home Instagram worthy. Our heart is for people who are ready to change,
yes,
who are at that point in the change cycle where they're frustrated, but they're also ready to change, and to make it a functional home, not an Instagram worthy home. Like I don't care if the before and afters look hardly different. Like it is the point is to make a home functional. So if that means having the hair ties and the brush by the front door for your kids, and you're doing their hair just before you walk out the door, then that's what will work, rather than like walking out the door and realizing that your daughter hasn't done her hair and then having to run upstairs to the bathroom to get all the hair ties, or her bedroom, wherever. We want homes to be functional. And that's part of our job, is also to assess what things aren't working well, because that is why people find habits challenging, because, okay, I need to put this away, but I need to put my handbag away, but the place that I've put to put my handbag away is in my bedroom upstairs. And so of course I'm not going to go upstairs and put my handbag away, because as much as I think that a lot of us are inherently lazy, and not that's not said from a place of,
yes,
it's said from a place of love and understanding and compassion and tons of grace. But that's what we're looking for. Like, what have you done in your home to make it even more challenging for yourself to keep this place tidy and clutter-free? And the biggest thing that we see is people just have too much stuff. And that's why it's hard for them to put things away, because they don't, you can't put your clothes away because your tall boy is full of stuff, or your wardrobe is so full that you can't even put your t-shirt away because you can't get there. So that's where we're always coming in and going, okay, what doesn't need to be in the home? Because the less that's in the home, the easier it is to implement habits and to keep them up.
Yeah, to find spaces for the stuff that you have got. Yeah. And that is so true. I've just bought myself a spice rack and I'm so excited because all the spices are sitting in this rack and they all have a place. But now I have to find a place in my pantry to put it. So I'm with you. I'm sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I've really got to clean the pantry out now to find a spot for it. But it is all, it's even like when they talk about exercise, if you have your shoes ready by your bed and your clothes laid out and you roll over and put your clothes on, it's much easier to do those things. So like you say, not taking away and making everything sterile and hard to do, if you've got that ability to make things smooth, it does make such a difference. And there's no point, is there, in having something that you're not going to do? It's no like you say, Instagrammable. I mean, and Instagram's just another thing that just sets up everybody for a bout of anxiety anyway, I'm sure. So, that's fantastic. Now, listen, I was looking at your 10 common pitfalls, and I don't know how fast or whether you have them around that you can look at. I'm quite happy to read them out to you. But they are fantastic pitfalls, and I don't know how fast we can go through them. Can we start, like, not having a clear goal? So tell me about not having a clear goal.
Yeah, well, we often say to people that having a vision for your home or your goal for your home, like that is what can underpin the decisions. So, and it's about having a vision for your goal for your home that aligns with your values. So how do you want your home to feel? And then that's where you can work towards that. So if you want a calm and relaxing environment, and yet you keep shopping online and not got anywhere to put these stuff that you're buying, then that's not marrying up, and your goals aren't aligning, because your goal is to live in a calm and relaxing home, and yet you're doing something different to not achieve that goal. So that was
does that
help?
And the focusing on perfection is very Instagram, isn't it? In that sense of wanting to meet the expectations of others that don't even know you almost.
Yeah, and that's, again, that comes back to the functionality of the home. Like, who cares if your shoes are by the front door? If that's what works for you, then that's what needs to happen for you. Like, again, I encourage people all the time that people are coming to your home to spend time with you. And if they're judging you for where you put things, then
are they your friend?
Are they your friend? They may be your mother-in-law, but again,
it's exactly right.
But it's your home, and you get to choose how you want your home to run. And so again, that's where it's like, don't look to Instagram, don't look to even how your friends run their home, because look at them for inspiration and encouragement. Don't make, don't rainbow categorize your bookshelf if you can't find the book that you're looking for, or don't rainbow categorize your pantry and put everything in glass jars and then realize that the glass jars have got 2-year-old cornflakes in it because you couldn't be bothered opening up decanting the cornflakes into that glass jar. Like, it has to work for you and your unique family, and it has to be functional. Like, that, the number one priority is function over prettiness.
So really, that's a real priority, isn't it? Functionality is really huge. Now, there's another one, not having a plan for discarded items, which is so true.
Yeah.
So how do you separate people with that one? Like, what do you make them do before they throw out? Do you make them decide where it's going to go?
Not often. My biggest thing is just get it out of your home. Like, just don't worry about finding the perfect solution for it. Like, yes, we want to be environmentally friendly, and I'm not saying don't care about the environment, but when it comes to decluttering and doing that big first purge and decluttering and like getting that ball rolling, just send everything to Salvos, send everything to Vinnie's. Like, don't send them junk. Put the junk in the bin and recognize that that's not worthy of anybody else buying. Like, and you may have paid good money for it. It doesn't matter anymore. Nobody's going to buy it. And you're just causing Vinnie's and Salvos to chuck it in the bin for you, and they have to pay for that, which, you can chuck it in your bin. So it is about having a plan. But the plan is like, okay, on Wednesdays as I drive to the gym, I'm going to drop this off to a clothing bin. And having, like, we have a little cubby hole in one of our cupboards that is for anything donatable. So anytime my kids try on clothes and they're too small, or they go through their room and they realize they don't like it, or we are using something in the kitchen and we're like, or we don't use something in the kitchen, we see it and we're like, oh, that's getting in the way of what I actually need to use. Right, that goes in that cubby hole. So it's more about, again, it's not getting stuck on perfectionism and, I need to get that to that particular person or that particular charity. Yeah, you can do that in the future when you've got the mental space and the time to do that, rather than in the overwhelm that you're feeling when you start decluttering.
And when we talk about personality types, my son said he wouldn't let Paul and I do So he insisted on selling whatever we had in the shed, right? So he was like, but you can't do that. You paid X amount for this, and I can't believe you're just going to give that away. And we were saying to him, look, forget it. We just want to get rid of it. And he did sell it, and he did make some money, but it did take time, and it was a frustrating process. So certain people, Paul and I are not into resell. We just get rid of, but there are certain types that really struggle with that. Oh my goodness, I've paid that money for that and I really can't let it go, even if it's 100 years old and no one else is really going to get it. So it is a huge, a really big difference. We actually had a bit of an argument with him over it because we said we want to get rid of it now,
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And that's where
very,
there's always
stressful.
this balance between efficiency, and just getting, you've got the momentum, you've got the ball rolling, let's just get it out, put it on curbside pickup,
Or just on curbside, it disappears.
Yeah, 100%. So put it on curbside until a neighbor complains and then bring it back in. But likely it's not going to be there in 4 hours' time. So put it on curbside. But it is about balancing that, at the start. That's what I say to people at the start. When you've got the momentum, do the easiest, make the easiest choice for you, because it's in that overwhelm and that you start to negate the movement and the momentum that you've built, because then you start questioning yourself. Now you need to question, I'm not saying just sell everything, send everything to salvos. You want to be intentional in your decisions. But again, if money isn't an issue for you, then, and also valuing your time, your time and your son's time. I would have loved, and I'm sure you both said this to him, but what is your time worth? You're getting $50, but you've spent more than 5 hours on that thing. So is your value, is your time worth $10 an hour? No, it's not.
No, it's not. And they're the things that I think people don't realize. I agree with you, that time is money, and a lot of the time they spend, so much time wasting. Yep, no, totally with you. So the next one's underestimating the time required. How long it actually takes to get rid of something. So sometimes people think it's going to be very quick. Mm-hmm. But like we say, if you can ignore the previous one, not having a plan, then you're on your way, aren't you?
Yeah. And people do, particularly after the Marie Kondo, where her recommendation is to get everything out of your cupboard. And then people are like, oh my goodness, now the kids are coming home from school. I've got to
overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. So that's why I'm take bite-sized chunks out of things, do things in small chunks, because then you're not overwhelmed by you're underestimating the time.
So ignoring the root cause of clutter, I think that's really one of the most important things, isn't it?
100%. And that is what we spoke about before. Is it your upbringing? Is it the way that your parents, maybe your parents grew, or maybe your grandparents were in the Depression, or your parents were in the Depression and they were you need to look after everything, or maybe you grew up in poverty. And so now that you've got things, you really value them, and you have to everything is really precious. Maybe you're sentimental type of personality, and you are keeping every single thing that one person touched ever. Or maybe it is because you have a shopping addiction and you are filling that void with shopping. Or maybe it is because you name your poison, my friend. There's so many reasons why we clutter our homes. And again, it could be because you never got taught how to be intentional in what you bring into your home and what you let go of, or that you've never been taught how to create homes for things, and so things just lie everywhere because you don't you don't know where you should put it. Maybe you are looking on Instagram and wanting to find the perfect thing, because perfectionism is huge. That's a huge stumbling block, because people are like, well, I'm not going to declutter today because I need to have the perfect solution for that. And I can't find that right now because I don't have the time or the capacity. So,
yeah, and that's that's quite a big personality trait as well in that sense. So procrastination, self-sabotage. Now, procrastination, everybody procrastinates, and they all have different reasons for procrastination. So like you say, it's working out what your procrastination style is to a degree, and how you do self-sabotage, because procrastination is often fear, or it's not understanding. It's fear of going forward. For me, often procrastination is I don't know enough about something, so I don't move forward. So I always think, well, learn about it, and then you can get moving. You can get that momentum. So that's obviously a huge one for this area.
Yeah, and that ties into that perfectionism as well. Like
absolutely.
I am not going to start because I need to buy that spice rack before I go into the kitchen and declutter. So I'm not going to declutter the pantry because I need the storage solution first. And then like, okay, I've got the storage solution, but I'm still not going to do that. I'm not picking on you.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know if it's still there in 3 weeks' time.
I'll be checking in on you.
Okay, that would be good.
I think that a lot of people, they do exactly that. They find the storage solution first, and then they get to organizing. And we always say that you may not even need that storage solution if you do the decluttering first. So declutter first. I'm not saying that about the spice rack. You've got spices.
But I think you might be right.
Yeah, maybe you really only use one spice and you may not have needed a whole spice rack.
No, so anyone listening, don't buy a spice rack, because I think I've made a mistake. But that's all right. I'll work it out, because somehow or other that's going to get in the pantry. It's going to fit no matter what I have to throw out. So we've talked about kind of overwhelming yourself. So holding on to sentimental items, we've also kind of discussed that, letting go of your sentimental feelings around things. And it is very hard. And I've watched certain people linger on that for a long time, and it's very hard to reach those people. Sometimes it is a psychological thing that they need talking to people
and sometimes
about.
It is just recognizing for those people that are sentimental, that I find sometimes, again, not necessarily the ones who need that deeper root cause therapy, but sometimes people just need that permission that actually your memories of that person live within you, and you are the storehouse of that. And so how can you hold on to those people and those memories without holding on to the physical, or without holding on to everything that person's touched? Like, your grandmother may have given you a whole tea set, but you don't even drink tea and you'd never drink a cup of coffee out of that tea set. So, but what's sentimental about it is that it was your grandmother's, and you do remember going over and watching her use it, or you used it with her. Maybe only keep a cup and a saucer.
Oh, that's a nice idea. Yeah.
Rather than keeping the whole thing. And what I say all the time is actually write down those stories, and maybe write down the stories and take a photo of that, because that's the memories and the stories is what people care about. Your children are going to find joy in listening to that story, depending on how old they are. Yeah. Teenagers,
that's right.
Not so
no,
much.
No.
Younger and older, maybe. And it's story. I mean, we're all moved by stories. That's why you're listening to a podcast.
We are. That's right.
Because we're moved by stories. So tell stories. And that's what will be remembered by you. Your children, your family, your friends will remember the stories. And And then you're also teaching and teaching yourself and others how to move through that sentimentality.
Yeah. No, that's a fabulous idea. I really like that. And the last one was buying more than you need. And in today's society, I hope my daughter won't listen to this. But yes, that does go on. Buying more than you need is just massive now.
Yeah. And I think COVID did not help us when we moved to everybody shopping online. And so people I'll just buy this. I'll buy 3 sizes in case I don't know. And then they can't be bothered returning the 2 sizes that don't fit. Or we get sucked in, and we're signed up to every single email under the sun. And so you'll open your emails and you're like, oh, Witchery's having a sale. Oh, I'll go and have a look at Witchery. And yet I didn't even care to buy anything today. I was only because I was prompted by the email. And so unsubscribe as much as possible and just go out shopping when you need to and be intentional about what you're shopping for. So, keep a list. And my husband and I have saved so much money because we may not buy in the sales, but we only buy what we need when we need it. And so we've saved ourselves heaps because we're not just buying for the sake of buying. We may have paid full price for that jumper, but we didn't buy 5 of them.
No.
On sale.
and you couldn't be bothered not returning them. The amount of packages that we popped into Goodwill that still have tags and haven't been opened or haven't been quite the right size, and then refunding them's too much, can't be bothered sending them back. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Oh my goodness, Kirsty, I could talk for hours.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, we should. So what's the first thing we should do if we want to clear clutter from our lives, aside from calling you? What's one thing people can do immediately?
Great question. Look around your home with fresh eyes. Just take your camera out, walk around your home with a video, videoing your home, and look at it from the perspective of what needs to live in those rooms. What actually, if I was inspecting this home, if I was coming in to buy this home again, what would I be judging myself on? Because then that will help you to see your home with fresh eyes. It's having fresh eyes on your home and then going, well, actually, does that even need to live in my home at all? Or does it need to live in this room? Actually, it's only going to take me 5 minutes to run around this room and put things back in the rooms that they belong in. So, and I think tidying up your home helps you to realize which drawers are too full and where can I not put things away. I can't even put the wooden spoon away because the potato masher and everything else is taking up the room in this, I can't even get into my utensils drawer.
Yes.
So,
Had that before. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kirsty. Look, Kirsty has a wonderful list on her podcast to help you get through decluttering, and her details will be in the show notes. But thank you for being a wonderful guest today. Really enjoyed it, and I'll be going back and looking over my house after this and just checking out a lot of things. Thank you, Kirsty.
Thanks so much, Kate, for having me.
If your life and house need decluttering, start slowly. Look at what kind of personality you are and how much clutter makes you feel stressed. Look at Kirsty's 10 common pitfalls and see if there's one area that you can choose to start from. Break your decluttering journey into steps. Remember, this is not just a physical journey, it's an emotional one too. If you need help, call Kirsty. If you're mentally and emotionally struggling, seek medical advice first. I'm Kate Mason, and thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.